Welcome to Soul Sisteries. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Soul Sisteries. We have just talked with the fabulous Tracy Earlywine, minister in Centers for Spiritual Living, also just a longtime dear friend of mine. And I just love talking to her always. She's so inspiring and centering to me and just so authentic.
And I love just to hear her kind of through the whole interview talk about joy and the importance of joy and, you know, her music, her inspiration, her, service is all about joy. And I just love to hear that.
And those connections. Didn't you love the little story about her as a little girl connecting with nature, touching all the leaves? It's just so sweet. Everybody just listen in. You're going to love every moment. Welcome to Soul Sisteries.
Well, it's good to have everybody here with us today as we introduce Reverend Tracy Earlywine. She is the senior minister at the Claremont Center for Spiritual Living in Southern California. Tracy describes herself as a teaching minister. In her own words, I seek to recognize love and spiritual principle in everyday life, to reach the deep silence of spirit and the mystical heights of transformation. I value integrity, authenticity, and consensus building in all that I do. I live life with delight and a deep commitment to empowering others to live their lives more abundantly. Although Tracy is a California native, she has traveled extensively, beginning with her year as a high school exchange student to Switzerland and her college language studies. Before becoming a minister, Tracy logged over 30 years in hospitality management and training. She traveled extensively in her professional life as a trainer with Starwood Hotels and Resorts. Tracy credits her travel experience as a foundation for her global perspective and inclusive ministerial style. We welcome people of all faiths into our teaching, understanding that each of us has what we need within to live and create our own best life. Coming together, we are creating a world that works for all. And so welcome, Tracy. I feel like
Thank you.
Get onto the stage now.
Thank you.
Amen to all of that. We're just so delighted to have you here. I've known you for years and I love you truly. And something that I love so much about you is that you demonstrate such beautiful, authentic, and graceful living. You're so true to the heart and with such peaceful ease and grace. That's the best word I can come up with. And so I just want you to know that, and I want everybody listening to know that from the outset.
Thank you.
That is who you are.
Especially on a really good day.
Oh, I just love you. I love you. So here, obviously, as we just heard in your bio, you've had a storied and varied career and many, as one lives a life, there are many different angles and corners and turns and all of that good stuff. But all of that collectively has brought you here. And I'm wondering if you want to share just kind of like the highlights. What is the journey that's gotten you to where you are right now doing what you do?
Well, I think, I've always been a spiritual seeker. I've always been curious. I did not do well with any religious organization that told me not to think or to just do, or no, this is it. No questions. I don't do no questions very well. So it kept me curious. It kept me asking. It kept me looking. And even as a little girl, just when I would walk to school, I would touch all the plants on the way to school. And I would make sure that I touched every leaf on the big plants so that none of the leaves felt left out. It's like I had this sense of connection and that life is life, and I could never have articulated it as a child, but I came with that. I really came with that. So, in my college years, I did a lot of exploring of different spiritual traditions. I went to a small college in the Midwest that had a great very liberal arts program, and it had been a pre-seminary school. So there were a lot of spiritual classes offered, taught by scholars, mostly Christian scholars. But I found myself just wanting to know more, always wanting to know more. And really believing that there was not one way, but that there was a way to understand life better. And so my mother became a minister, but it was after I had moved out of the house. So she found religious science, the science of mind teaching, which is now called Centers for Spiritual Living. And she and her husband had done all of the studies, and they took on a church. And when I would travel for work, I was often on the East Coast. They were back in Rhode Island. And so when I would see them on the East Coast, I would attend. And like most of it fit pretty well with how I saw the world. It was a very inclusive approach, a metaphysical approach, meaning just like when you take a literature class, there are layers and layers of meanings in any story. Beyond the plot, there are layers of meaning going on. And I was continued to be fascinated by that. So although I didn't grow up with her as a minister in the same house, so it's not like I was raised in it. It was something that came to me when I was in my 30s, I'd say. And her best friend was the local minister in my neighborhood when I finally returned to California to live and work. And I went to her church because I loved Reverend Joy. She was she was funny more than anything, and irreverent and practical and inspiring. So I continued to be inspired by the teaching, and I don't really know how I became a minister. I just kept taking the next class,
Yeah.
I kept taking the next class, and I remember going to Silomar, the big summer conference that we had for Centers for Spiritual Living, which is all like music and workshops and people that I would only see once a year because they lived on a different coast than I did. And I remember going, and I went to the open house for the college for Holmes Institute, which was the process of becoming a minister, the education. And I had never done that before. I'd been going for 15 years. I'd never walked in there. I just walked in, started talking to somebody, asked a few questions. And I remember her telling me, I was saying, well, I don't know if I want to do this. I mean, yeah, I know it starts in the fall. I don't know. I was just curious. And she said to me, well, pretty soon your head will catch up with your heart. You just let me know. And
Oh my
that
goodness.
was really the beginning of it. So here I am 20 years later, 10, 15 years later as a minister, and I don't know, 25 years into Science of Mind. So
And you just kept following your feet and following your heart. Yeah.
exactly. Next step. What's the next step? I have no idea what's around the next bend. I just know this is the next step.
Oh man, that's gorgeous. I love that. So you in sharing your story there, you use the word connection. And I know that when I asked you about what's your hope through,
Mhm.
that's the word that you came with.
Yes.
I know how important that is to you in your story, in your journey, and how you live your life. And I know that that's part of what you want to talk about today. That was
Hmm.
beautiful, by the way. I can just vision you as that little girl and touching all of those leaves and feeling that connection to the
Yes.
plant and to life. And it's as simple as that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's being able to recognize when we resonate with something or someone, and for me, that little walk to school every day was all about seeing, were the roses blooming yet? And was the dog in the yard? And was the little Italian lady on the corner out watering her grass in the front, and those were like just my little touchstones every morning during the week. And like I said, I came with that. It's just kind of how I've always seen the world. Something to be recognized and appreciated.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, sis, I'm sorry, you were jumping in?
Well, no, I was going to let you actually ask the question, but because you know a little bit more about Tracy than I do, I know you today, Tracy, and I appreciate that. But I think just hearing the bio, the first thought is, okay, well, we're going to talk about, religion, church, right? Spirituality. But you shared, Donna, the word connection and how important that is. And I think
Mhm.
talking a little bit before you showed up, Tracy. We were talking about kind of the importance of connection through challenging times in life.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I would love, if you can, to share a
Mhm.
little bit about that, about the importance and the value of connection during those
Right.
life.
And I will say to your first point about, we're going to talk about church. Part of I remember in ministerial school, we would do these mock panels. So like when you have your ordination panels, you're going to be interviewed by ministers and they're going to ask you questions and you got to know your stuff, right? And I remember I'm thinking to myself, she's going to ask, we were all sitting in a circle at some, colloquium or something, and the dean is asking everybody questions like these are things you're going to have to answer. And I'm thinking, don't ask me that, don't ask me that, don't ask me that. And sure enough, she asked me the one thing I didn't want her to ask me, which was, so tell me about your spiritual practice. And I thought, I am so busted because my spiritual practice doesn't always look like a ritual or a formula or I do this 10 minutes every day and I do that 3 times a day. It doesn't look like that. My spiritual practice is looking for the truth in every situation. And I don't mean like the facts of what are happening, but what is the bigger picture? What else is going on here? Because I know when I hear somebody tell their story of their difficult relationship or I do a lot of counseling with people and maybe they've got a kid that's has addiction issues or maybe whatever the trauma is, maybe for themselves they're going through grief or what I know is I don't see the whole story listening to someone. I don't see the whole story when I read someone's post on Facebook. I don't from this one place. And so my spiritual practice is to remember that there is a bigger picture here, whatever it is. And so that's what informs how I find connection in my life because I connect I consciously choose to connect to spirit, that my sense of the divine, my sense of the energy and essence of all life that we all share. Something animates all of us. And that something is, although we are unique in how we express it, that something is the same for everybody. We all seek love. We all need shelter. We all want to be safe. These are all these are innate human qualities and desires. And by recognizing the bigger picture, then the circumstances become less intense. It's not to say that it's less important because what I experience on a human level is very real. It's absolutely true. It's what's going on in the moment. And, I would never tell somebody that, everything's okay when it certainly doesn't feel okay. So to me the idea of connection is I connect first with what I know about the bigger picture of life, the sense of source or spirit or by any whatever you call it. For some people it's nature, for some people maybe it's music, whatever you connect with. But I also know that I do better when I connect with people in a way that is heart to heart. And so whether that's a friend or whether it's family or and sometimes it's community, like I want to be surrounded by, I want to be part of a group that's doing something that excites me or nurtures and feeds me, then connection happens on all of those levels. And for me, when I'm in a dark place or when I'm frustrated or when I'm overwhelmed, which seems to be happening a lot lately, and I know I'm not the only one,
Yeah.
what moves me forward is that finding a point of connection with someone, whether it's a conversation or me even just hearing them talk and try to get clear and ask questions, or maybe it's me going off, getting it, for me, an open road, a full tank of gas, and the stereo up loud. I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to come back all grounded and back in my body and ready to go again. So I think that we each have to find our own way to what we connect to, because that is what fills us up so that we can show up in the world, so we can participate.
Yeah. So how did you arrive at this such clear knowing and such a clear ability to get to that groundedness and to re-find your center? How did you get from that little Tracy touch in the leaves to
Mm,
here? What because for each of us, right, we can go in different directions and we can not find this so centered place.
yeah.
What did
Well, I will credit some of that early process to um, therapy. Learning the value of talking to someone and being heard, really being heard and validated, and then in that process being able to let go of whatever truly is in the past and no longer has power over me. Um, I'm thinking about this some more. So go ahead, ask me again. How did I get to?
Yeah, how did you get from that little Tracy touching the leaves to this
Mm,
woman who is in the midst of hardships and challenges and
mm,
obviously aware of things that go on in the world that are not
mhm.
filled with love? Uh,
Right.
but to maintain your sense of love and center and all of that. And I mean, therapy is a great answer. Yeah.
Therapy is really helpful. I mean,
It's
that really did lay the foundation, and when I was first thinking about going to college, I really thought I might go into psychology because I had the sense of the benefit of it. I felt like I was a much freer, much lighter, much brighter light in the world, and that was a big part. But I also think it's in some ways started with hindsight of being able to look back, having somebody point out to me, hey, let's remember. I know you feel like crap right now, but let's remember when you were in this other situation and you did this and this and this, and you weren't sure it was ever going to end, and then it got better, and you've done that all along the way. So being able to look back and see that I was stronger than I thought, or I did have helpers, or I did
yeah.
find a way forward. And for me, the truth that there is always a way forward is what allows me to keep thinking about possibilities. And then honestly, the philosophy that I teach, the science of mind philosophy it's not just positive thinking and, think yourself into wealth. And that's not what it is. It really is understanding that any possibility in life is available, and our choices bring us to the possibilities that are ours to do. And so practicing that and learning about that and teaching classes about that and seeing the light go on for someone else. um I had someone ask me when I was, just taking classes at the center I was at the times, and say, is your life better when you're in class? It's like, well, yeah. Why? What makes the difference? What makes the difference is where I'm putting my attention, and being willing
Wow.
to kind of figure out, all right, well, how does spirit show up in this situation? Or how is there a greater truth happening here? How, when this looks so dark, can there possibly be any joy in life? And now I see it all the time. It's a practice. It's, if you look for something, you will find it. You
Mm.
know, I have a lot of friends that, uh, they think the world is a hard place, and people are going to take advantage of them, and they're proven right all the time. And then I have other people who say life is great, and it's not always easy, but you know what, I always come out okay. And you know what, they always come out okay. I think we find what we're looking for, and so I've learned to look for better things, and I find them. And again, it doesn't stop all this other stuff from coming at us. It's like I go on my Facebook feed, I see all the stuff that's out there that's hurtful or hateful or angry or divisive, but Donna, you and I were talking earlier, and I said, I had a night, I was flipping through Facebook at night and, looking for the dog pictures and the cat videos and the friends on trips videos. And in between is all this political stuff and all this, everybody's opinion about everybody else and everything else. And it's just, it's so hard. And right now it's so negative and so divisive. And people are so anxious and so afraid and therefore so angry. And, after trying to skip over a bunch of those, I was like, okay, this is like no fun. I got to go to sleep. But then my little 2.5-year-old niece's video popped up on Facebook because her mama had posted it. And there she is in the park with her mama and her Gigi. And she's dancing. She's bouncing her little knees and dancing to reggae. And the three of them are dancing on the grass. And it's like, it's not just that was a happy thing. What I felt was my entire body changed. All that constriction and that tension and the tightness in my throat and the headache starting behind my eyes and wow, I really need to lay down and go to sleep. All of that was gone, and it was just this joy in this little package right here of this little girl dancing. And what it tells me is it's a reminder that joy is also true and also happening and also here. And so connecting with the music, connecting with her joy, connecting with family, those things refresh me so that as I then continued to scroll through Facebook, because I didn't really want to go to sleep just yet, none of that other stuff really got in. It's like my defenses were up, my feeling was better. I could look at it, I could have compassion for people that are really struggling. I could see how we are really in this huge upheaval of a process, and there is a way forward because all of these other things are also true.
That duality, right? Like this,
Yes.
not negating the reality of the hardships, the challenges,
Right.
pain that exists, and also
Mm-hmm.
little niece dancing in the park,
Right.
yay,
Right.
with mom and grandma, that exists
Yeah,
also. Yeah,
exactly. And that's always true.
and that's always true.
And even when I have a conflict within myself, I think I should have done something differently, or, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to respond 3 weeks ago to this person. And I get into that whole, that conversation, that conversation in your head,
I think it was just yesterday I had that
and it can
conversation
go
in my
on a
head.
really long time. And especially if it shows up at, 3 a.m, then you're like really in for it. But it's that reminder that I can choose where to put my attention. I can trust that I'm going to make that right, whatever it is, or I'm going to take the next step over there because there is a next step. And to me, that's what hope is. Hope is this knowing with confidence, knowing with trust, expecting a good outcome, expecting that the right option is available, will show up. I will know what to do. I may not see it from here. I don't even know why or what it is yet, but I know there is a step. I may not know what you need in your life to lift your depression or help you get along better with your kids, but I know there is something. And to me, that kind of confidence, that kind of trust, some people would call it faith. It can be a religious concept, but it doesn't have to be. It is what is in us that keeps us moving forward. And I can choose where I put my attention. And when I can't choose where I can put my attention, I call my friends, I talk to my spiritual advisor. I make sure I get outside. I do the things that nurture me,
Yeah.
you know.
So when did you know that? When did you come to that realization? Was that not as the little girl walking to school? Was it after the ministerial school? Was it when your mom became a minister? When did you learn that?
I think I learned it in my own. It was my own spiritual growth. I would say as a kid, I couldn't articulate it. I wouldn't have said that I knew it then. I couldn't name it then. Um, but the combination of psychological support and studying different spiritual paths, and specifically going to ministerial school, that was a big shift. The ministerial school gave me a language for it. I think I'd been discovering the concepts all along the way. Like, again, I could look back at my life and see where I had come through things that at the time I thought there was no way out. I was going to be stuck forever. We've all had that dark night, where we just think this is it, it's over. And I could always see that things happened or people happened along the way that brought me up and out. And school taught me to recognize that as living in possibility. Like, if I could know that at the beginning of my depression, if I could see that in the middle of the trauma or the sadness or the fear, if I could remember that in the middle of something happening to me, then I could shorten the time and effort that it took to get through it. And, not to get rid of it, not to pretend like it didn't happen, but to integrate it. All of those things shape us. All of my life experiences have shaped me. And I'm always at choice on how I want to live from this minute forward.
And what you just said right there, I think that's the key. They all shape you, but you're making conscious choices.
Yes,
about
I'm still more than that one thing.
Yeah.
Right? As whatever the hardest thing is, that's still not the whole story of my life.
Yeah.
And the relationship that goes south, it's like, that's still not the whole story of my ability to be in or have or appreciate a relationship.
Right.
Even though at the time,
it's that relationship that went south still had within it so many beauties and so many wonderful things that are all to be embraced. And
right.
In the end, it went south and you move forward. Yeah.
Right.
And I just see similarities between kind of what you shared with your education ministerial school and mine. I did choose that psychology route. So in my training as psychologist and therapist, would always say, like, even if I never did any counseling or any therapy for anybody, what I gained out of that experience is phenomenal. And I'm a better person for it. I'm a better partner for it, a better sister, a better mother.
Yes.
So I love to hear that there's this, like, we don't all have to go through the same path.
No, not at all. And I really, part of what I teach and part of what really moves me is I really have come to trust that people have their own answers, given enough space to find them, given enough time, given enough validation and patience for us to let what's inside of us rise up, because we do really know. I had a very distinct experience in one of my classes, in part of my training, counseling someone, and one of the ways in which I think is I see patterns and I make connections. I had a really hard time in geometry because I couldn't go step by step through the proof. I could get to the end and then I'd have to work backwards to figure out what this, because I just do it. I don't know how to explain it. So where was I going with that? So I had an experience where somebody was talking about something going on in their life. I was counseling them, so I was listening, right? And I said something about, like, what to me was the obvious next step. Oh, so that means you will da 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 da. And the person I was talking with or listening to their credit, said, "No, I don't think that's it." And they waited a second and then they said what they thought. And of course, what they thought was perfect for them. And I never would have said that because it was not part of my framework, wasn't part of my experience, wasn't part of what had shaped me in my life. And that stuck with me. That whole conversation stuck with me because I don't know what's best for you. I don't have to know what's best for you. What I do know is that there is a way forward that is right for you. And if I know that and I live that way, then I think people can see that. People get, they get hopeful for themselves. They think, oh, well, maybe there's a way forward for me too.
Mm.
And that's what opens the door to recognizing those next steps or those little nudges to go in a certain direction.
Well, let's take that then and make a connection, because you and I, we do know each other, and we were
Yes.
talking earlier, and I know that part of what you have to share, and part of, the challenge that you've experienced in your own life is around sort of the end of life, the later part of the life for your parents, and
Mm-hmm.
the challenges in their health and their care, and
Mm-hmm.
that how hard that was, and just how all of this applies to that journey, that you're not saying, well, oh, everything was just fine and
Yeah,
everything,
right.
I just thought my
This
way
isn't theory.
through
This is like
to,
real
yeah,
stuff, right? Yeah.
yeah. So if you talk a little bit about that, and this idea of connections also, and the hope through the connections, if you would.
Yeah. So my mom and her husband, I should say her last husband, they met later in life. They had like 15 years together. And the first 7, they met because my mom was in rehab. She'd had a minor stroke. She had some physical challenges. So she was doing physical therapy, and she met Paul on the rehab bus. He was there for back surgery, recovery from back surgery. So they had the first 7 years of their lives together was this whirlwind of activity and travel, and I've never seen my mom happier. They both adored each other. He was a staunch Catholic and she was a science of mind minister, and they had the best conversations. It was fabulous. And then my mom took another fall and had a more serious injury which compromised her ability to communicate. And um and Paul took on the main role of caregiver, which worked really well until his own health began to decline a bit. He was in his 80s. And it got to the point where we knew that they were going to need more help at home. And my stepsister, Paul's daughter, has a medical background, lives close by, and would just like stop by and check in on him. And, we kind of make sure I'll bring dinner one night. Hey, can you bring dinner another night? And so the two of us would kind of tag team, just making sure we were there. Well, as things go, their health continued to decline and they needed more care, and it got more complicated. And my mom wasn't really responding to therapy anymore, like speech therapy or just to be able to do practical things for herself. She was losing what she'd had before. And I remember talking to her neurologist and I said, I know that if I could spend a couple hours a day with her on helping her with her verbalization and vocabulary and helping her find the words, and I know that if it was more intense, we could make more progress. And I looked at her and I was so upset. I said, but I just can't do it. And she said one of the most valuable things to me. She said, she says, that's not what you give her. That's not your role with her. That's not for you to do. You need to be there because she's your mom. And that shifted everything for me. So when I think about the word connection with that, I think about me connecting with a larger community of support, that I wasn't doing it all by myself. I think about me connecting with my mom in any and every way I could, that whatever I did was enough. Like whatever I did, however I showed up, was what worked. And I have a very distinct picture of her coming in early in the morning to help her get ready in the morning. And as we were going, if we didn't have a caregiver with them, I was going to put her to bed or I was going to get her up, and we were helping because Paul couldn't do the physical changes and stuff like that with her. And I remember walking into the room and she was just kind of lying in bed looking at nothing, not really processing or connected. And she saw my face and her face lit up, like she knew exactly who I was and why I was there. And that recognition that that connection is valuable in and of itself made it possible for me to drive 7 days a week at 10 o'clock at night and help her get to bed, and go on the weekends when the caregiver didn't show up, or, and I wasn't the only one. We had a whole circle of people doing that. And it's human nature to connect. It's human nature to love. It's human nature to help. All you have to do is look at what happens when there's any kind of communal disaster, the fires, or the hurricanes. Everybody shows up. Everybody shows up. You don't ask the guy next to you filling sandbags what church he goes to or who he voted for, or, that stuff doesn't matter when we're present to each other. And so, had I not been able to reach out when I needed help, or to ask the questions that needed to be asked, or to take a break, to say, look, we're going on this trip, this camp, whatever it was, we're going to be gone this weekend. I'll be back next week to do all the stuff. If I hadn't been able to do that for myself, I wouldn't have been able to be there for her. So if we can't, go look at the cat video in between listening to the news, we can't be present to make a difference or to take care of ourselves, or, put your own oxygen mask on first. You can't help anybody if you can't breathe.
Yeah,
kind of bottom line.
Just bottom line it right there.
Yeah, right.
So true.
But what it's also done is I expect to find those connections. I expect to see those helpers. Not that I expect any one person to do something for me. It's not like that. It's just this is how life works. This is how we are with each other. And when we're not, then I need to take a step back and breathe, or dance, or sing, or hide, or whatever it is, and then come back to the world.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah.
As you said that, your little kitty.
I love that.
That was Sweetheart.
Oh,
She has a little heart on her forehead. That's how she got that name.
that's precious.
Yeah.
What would, I guess I have two questions I want to ask, and I'm wondering which one I'm going to ask. What would your 13-year-old self, your little girl, your 13-year-old, just kind of maybe starting to come into her own there as a teen, what would she say to you, or what would she think about what you're doing now and kind of your perspective of things now? What do you think?
She'd be like, Donna, she'd be going, how did you get there? How did you do that? Because at 13, nothing looked possible and everybody was stupid. So it's really hard to see a way forward. And the other part of her would say, I told you I was smart. I told you I could figure it out. Because I think there's something in me I know, and I see it in other people, whether they do or not. There's something in us that knows. And so I would go back to her and say, see, I told you could do it. I knew you could do it. Here we are.
How smart that little girl was, because the story you told us first was that touching all the leaves. And I'm thinking of all the research today.
Yes.
What it does to touch and talk to our plants and give our plants love and how they flourish. And so you before the research was out there. So
yes, I was probably the living example.
I mean, right when the poop has fallen down, go talk to a tree. It cannot fail.
The whole forest bathing idea. Yeah. Well, and isn't it fascinating that what the mystics of every spiritual tradition come to is the same place of oneness? Yeah. It doesn't matter how they got there. It doesn't matter what path they were on. They get to oneness. And isn't it interesting that quantum physics says that the underlying substance of all life is one substance? And how spirituality and religion, which had been together, in the Middle Ages, and then separated, and is now coming back together. They're not mutually exclusive. We're not only building blocks. We do have a sense of unity and connection under the surface that is measurable, that we can see. And we've always sensed it, but now we can measure it. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting. That's some good stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah. What was your other question, sis? I'm curious.
So I was wondering if I was going to say, what would she say to her 13-year-old self?
Oh,
Oh, that's a
yeah,
good one.
that's good. Yeah, what I said. Like, you were really smart. You had it all along. Good job.
Mm,
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
the shoes all along. You had
That's right.
the way. It was in you always, Dorothy.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. I love you. Okay, so in this varied world, who is it that inspires you, my friend?
Mm. Who inspires me?
I mean, obviously, your 2.5-year-old niece, for sure.
Yes. Any baby, any baby. Um, I'm inspired by uh the writers that I see, the artists that I see that continue to express, not in spite of, but because of the fractured culture we are living in. It's the folks that can articulate these ideas. It's the artists that can bring a sense of beauty to something that pulls us out of the difficulty or the darkness. It's the musicians that write a song that touch the heart about, hey, you got this. It's a deep well. You're okay. You know, I'm not okay. It's okay to not, what is it? I'm not okay. And we're all going to be all right. The country song that's up now. It's like, so that's what inspires me, is that we all have that in us. And that is the hope of tomorrow. That is the confidence that there is a future and that there is a way to get there.
Big snaps to that. Yes, absolutely.
So, do you have a life philosophy?
Well, I kind of teach a life philosophy all the time,
Yeah.
but if I had to distill it down, I would say that that love is the power of life,
Mm.
and that love is what creates the path forward, and there is always a path forward. I think that's my biggest motivator. There is always a way forward. I don't have to know what's possible, but I do know that it's something is possible. And I'm okay with it coming from an unexpected direction, you know? Like that person who thinks they have to get a new job because their job doesn't pay them enough and they're not making enough to live on and they need a new job and they need a raise. And then it's like, or you could marry money, or you could get an inheritance from somebody you didn't know. Or it's like, any way it comes. Or somebody could just buy you lunch every day. You
Wow.
know, that whole idea that our good comes to us from many different directions. I'm just open to it.
Yeah, that
That's
is
a
a
gorgeous reminder. I'm sorry, sis, I talked right over you. What were you saying?
same thing. That is a good message for today, where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yeah,
helpful.
thank
That
you for that.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter where it's from. There's always a path forward, and love is the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's gorgeous. I'm writing both of those down. And
Or you
also,
can listen.
we have
You
this
listen to my
recorded.
Sunday talks. I say them pretty much every time.
Yeah, perfect. 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 Excellent. All right. So, let me ask you, as there's obviously still much life to be lived.
Mhm.
And yet when the time comes, when that curtain is drawn and you move on to the next whatever it is,
Mhm.
how do you hope that those here remember you when they think of you? What's that legacy that you hope to leave behind?
I think it's a feeling of living with joy, and let me see if I can articulate this. It's what I've done with like my parents passing and some friends that have gone. There's a something in me that knows that I have been shaped by that relationship and that is not lost. So when I feel that and see it in the present day, even though they seem to be gone, quote unquote, they live. And so what I would want is that people thinking of me would have a feeling or a sense of the joy and the possibility and the laughter, and the depth of life that would inspire them to do the same.
So beautiful. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's lovely.
Can't help but think your beginning of that response said living with joy.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to when we asked who inspires you, it was also Reverend Joy.
Oh, yeah. 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 She hasn't passed yet, but yeah, definitely.
Joy is kind of pervasive in your life. And
It
this,
is. And my first ministry was at the Huntington Beach Church. And that was, I didn't pick it. It just was the theme of my ministry. One of the things I did when I got there is I'd found these like removable stick on the wall posters, long, skinny posters at Michael's or someplace with the word joy on them. And the thing about the Huntington Beach Sanctuary in the center is that there are these pillars right in the middle of the room. And, people smack into them. So I took those long, skinny joy posters and put them up on those pillars so that people wouldn't smack into them. And the word joy was like all over the sanctuary. And I thought, this is my ministry. This is it right here. And the fact that my first minister was Reverend Joy, because I don't count my mom, because she wasn't ever my minister, she was my mom. We did call her Reverend Mom once in a while, which she loved, of course. But yeah, it was all about joy.
Fabulous. All right. Well, are you good? I think we've come to the part in our little podcast where we do our rapid fire questions. And as we
Oh
say,
gosh.
don't necessarily have to be that rapid or fired. We're just ask questions and always just whatever first comes to your mind.
Okay.
Is the
Okay.
answer rather than deep thought.
No
Yeah.
deep thought. All right, I'll try.
Okay. You want to take it away, sis?
sure. Kind of like, if you're walking up to the stage, what would be your walk-in song?
Three Dog Night, Joy to the World.
Yep.
That was there. What book changed you?
Oh, okay, I have two. When I was a kid, it was A Wrinkle in Time
Mm.
by Madeline L'Engle. That
Mhm.
whole perspective thing. And on my spiritual path, I would say This Thing Called You by Ernest Holmes.
Both excellent books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What movie lives rent-free in your brain?
Oh, my favorite movie of all times is Mary Poppins. And it's that combination of imagination and play and music. And I always wanted to jump into a picture that was painted on the sidewalk,
Right?
right? And
Yes.
float up to the ceiling while having tea. I mean, that all-time favorite movie.
I have hope for us, Tracy. We will do those things somehow,
Yes, we
some way.
will. We will.
It will happen. Okay, what did you love doing as a kid that you love doing to this day?
Anything to do with color. I like to play with color. So like coloring mandalas or magic marker. I write my talks on Sunday in color, different colors for quotes versus spiritual versus real life versus exam. I mean, orange and blue and green. When I was a little girl, there we had some game that had these little baby poker chips, with the little ridges on them, but they were tiny. And I used to stack them up in different orders so I could get different stripes on it, all yellow. I mean, anything to do with color. I still do that.
Oh, that's a fun fact to know about you. I like that. I like that. Was it
What
my question or yours? I lost track, sis.
What in your world is lighting you up right now?
What is lighting me up right now? Yeah, there might not be a quick answer to that one. Again, I think it's this sense that whatever all this noise and what feels like destruction is happening, I still know that something is coming forth. And it's because of the art and the music and the people speaking up and the the outrage at inhumanity and the extension of helping hands wherever possible. Whenever I see that, I think that's what just makes it all okay. Makes progress possible. And I think I need that more than anything right now, is to know that progress is possible.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. What color is hope?
I think it's yellow. I think it's light. I think it's cheerful. I think look, let me show you the way.
Yeah. What does hope sound like?
It sounds like the breeze in the trees and the music in the distance, and it's whatever draws you forward down the path.
Oh, wow. Okay, I can hear it. I can hear it right now. All right, so complete the statement. Connection is.
The language of the heart.
I love that. Okay. Spirit is.
Everything.
The meaning of life is. Just a small
The
app.
meaning of life
Yeah.
is the meaning of life. What does life mean? Expression. Yeah, we're here to express.
Hope is.
Always possible.
And on that gorgeous note, I think we've come to a beautiful conclusion.
Wonderful.
Hope is always possible. Gosh, Tracy, thank you so much for your time, your insights, your wisdom, your heart, and your joy. It's infectious.
It has been a pleasure, and a little nerve-wracking, but really just a delight to hear, to be asked a question and to realize I do have something to say about that, and then to have you receive it in such a generous way. This is what we do for each other, and I love it. I love what you're doing with the show. I just think it's fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm soaking that in. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say for me, and I think, Donna, I think you agree that it is kind of like it's about me because I want to know more about you, so I'm being selfish by saying, hey, come on the show. But I want to know more about you. I want to feel more hope. I think that is the hope through connection is exactly why we're doing this, because these connections, somebody Donna knows well, somebody I didn't know as well, until today, to give us that connection gives us more hope. So.
Yes, exactly. And I will just put in a little plug, a little commercial for my center. You can find our Sunday service online. Go to our webpage at ClaremontCSL.org. Scroll down and there's a link to all the past Sunday talks, and we are on Facebook and all of that. But it's like, check out this philosophy, because what I'm speaking is a way of life that is possible, and it doesn't matter what spiritual path you're on. You don't have to give up being whatever you are. It's just a different way of appreciating what life has to offer, and trusting what we ourselves have to offer to life.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you did share that. We want everybody to know that too. You can hear so much more from the fabulous Reverend Tracy, all sorts of wonderful talks, and go live and visit and be among others of like mind, and learn and share that joy together, and really share the realness, the heart. That's with no pretense about where we are and who we are. Just come authentically and connect.
Yes, and connect.
And therein is the hope. Thank you so much, beautiful Tracy.
You're so welcome.
For being with us. We love you. Mwah.
Thank you. Love you too.
Thanks for joining us today on Soul Sisteries.
And thanks for sharing stories with us. We'd love to hear your stories as well, and keep the conversation going, absolutely keeping the hope going. So we're really hopeful that you'll connect with our guests as well, who have great stories to share. Go ahead and follow them in various social media platforms or live venues.
wherever it is that they're performing and sharing what they do.
We would love to have you follow us on all of our social media platforms, subscribe and rate, as that will help us get our message of hope out to others.
Thanks for listening to Soul Sisteries.